All right, day 4, the Tower of Babel, Genesis 11, 1 through 9. At one time, all people of the world spoke the same language and used the same words. As the people migrated to the east, they found a plain in the land of Babylon and settled there. They began saying to each other, "Let's make bricks and harden them with fire." In this region, bricks were used instead of stones, and tar was used for mortar. Then they said, "Come, let us build a great city for ourselves, with a tower that reaches into the sky. This will make us famous and keep us from being scattered all over the world." But the Lord came down to look at the city and the tower the people were building. "Look," he said, "the people are united, and they all speak the same language. After this, nothing they set out to do will be impossible for them. Come, let us go down and confuse the people with different languages. Then they won't be able to understand each other." In that way, the Lord scattered them all over the world, and they stopped building the city. That is why the city is called Babel, because that is where the Lord confused the people with different languages. In this way, he scattered them all over the world. From Shem to Abram, Genesis 11, 10 to 26. This is the account of Shem's family. 2 years after the great flood, when Shem was 100 years old, he became the father of Arphaxad. After the birth of Arphaxad, Shem lived another 500 years and had other sons and daughters. When Arphaxad was 35 years old, he became the father of Shelah. After the birth of Shelah, Arphaxad lived another 403 years, and he had other sons and daughters. When Shelah was 30 years old, he became the father of Eber. After the birth of Eber, Shelah lived another 403 years and had other sons and daughters. When Eber was 34 years old, he became the father of Peleg. After the birth of Peleg, Eber lived another 430 years and he had other sons and daughters. When Peleg was 30 years old, he became the father of Reu. After the birth of Reu, Peleg lived another 209 years and had other sons and daughters. When Reu was 32 years old, he became the father of Zuru. And after the birth of Zuru, Ray lived another 207 years and had other sons and daughters. When Zuru was 30 years old, he became the father of Nahor. After the birth of Nahor, Zuru lived another 200 years and had other sons and daughters. When Nahor was 29 years old, he became the father of Terah. After the birth of Terah, Nahor lived another 119 years and had other sons and daughters. After Terah was 70 years old, he became the father of Abraham, Nahor, and Haran. 1 Chronicles 1, 24 to 27. So this is the family line descending from Shem: Arphaxad, Shelah, Eber, Peleg, Reu, Zuru, Nahor, Terah, and Abram, later known as Abraham. The family of Terah. Genesis 11, 27 to 31. Approximate timeline 2166 or 2000 BC. Beginning with the history of Terah's family, two dates are given: a traditional early date and an alternative later date. All dates are approximate. Okay. This is the account of Terah's family. Terah was the father of Abram, Nahor, and Haran. Haran was the father of Lot, but Haran died in Ur of the Chaldeans, in the land of his birth, while his father Terah was still living. Meanwhile, Abram and Nahor both married. The name of Abram's wife was Sarai, and the name of Nahor's wife was Milcah. Milcah and her sister Iskar were daughters of Nahor's brother Haran, but Sarai was unable to become pregnant and had no children. One day, Terah took his son Abram, his daughter-in-law Sarai, his son Abram's wife, and his grandson Lot, his son Haran's child, and moved away from Ur of the Chaldeans. He was headed for the land of Canaan. But they stopped at Haran and settled there. The call of Abram. Genesis 12, 1 through 9. Some years later, when Abram was grown and married, still living with his father in Haran, the Lord called Abram to go to a new land. The Lord had said to Abram, "Leave your native country, your relatives, and your father's family, and go to the land that I will show you. I will make you into a great nation. I will bless you and make you famous, and you will be blessed to others. I will bless those who bless you, and I will curse those that treat you with contempt. All the families on the earth will be blessed through you." Abraham departed as the Lord had instructed, and Lot went with him. Abram was 75 years old when he left Haran. He took his wife Sarai, his nephew Lot, and all his wealth, his livestock, and all the people he had taken into the household of Haran, and headed to the land of Canaan. When they are arriving in Canaan, Abram traveled through the land as far as Shechem. There he set up camp beside the oak of Mamre. At that time there was inhabitants in Canaan of the Canaanites. Then the Lord appeared to Abram and said, "I will give you this land to your descendants." And Abram built an altar there and dedicated it to the Lord, who had appeared to him. After that, Abram traveled south and set up a camp in the hill country with Bethel to the west and Ai to the east. There he built another altar and dedicated it to the Lord, and he worshipped the Lord. Then Abram continued traveling south by stages towards the Negev. Abram and Sarai in Egypt. Genesis 12:10-20. At that time, severe famine struck the land of Canaan, forcing Abram to go down into Egypt, where he lived as a foreigner. As he was approaching the border of Egypt, Abram said to his wife Sarai, "Look, you are a very beautiful woman. When the Egyptians see you, they will say, 'This is his wife. Let's kill him. Then we can have her. So please tell them you are my sister. Then they will spare my life and treat me well because of their interest in you." And sure enough, when Abram arrived in Egypt, everyone noticed Sarai's beauty. When the palace's officers saw her, they sang her praises to Pharaoh, their king, and Sarai was taken into his palace. Then Pharaoh gave Abram many gifts because of her: sheep, goats, cattle, male, female donkeys, male and female servants, and camels. But the Lord sent terrible plague upon Pharaoh and his household because of Sarai, Abraham's wife. So Pharaoh summoned Abram and accused him sharply. "What have you done to me?" he demanded. "Why didn't you tell me she was your wife? Why did you say she is my sister and allow me to take her as my wife? Now then, here is your wife. Take her and get out of here." Pharaoh ordered some of his men to escort them, and he sent Abram out of the country along with his wife and all his possessions. Abram and Lot separate in Genesis 13:1-18. So Abram left Egypt and traveled north into the Negev, along with his wife and Lot and all that they owned. Abram was very rich in livestock, silver, and gold. From the Negev, they continued traveling by stages towards Bethel and pitched their tents between Bethel and Ai, where they had camped before. This was the same place where Abraham built the altar, and there he worshipped the Lord again. Lot, who was traveling with Abram, had also become very wealthy with flocks of sheep and goats, herds and cattle, and many tents. But the land could not support both Abram and Lot. All their flocks, herds, living so close together, disputes broke out between the herdsmen of Abram and Lot. At that time, Canaanites and Perizzites were also living in the land. Finally, Abram said to Lot, "Let's not allow this conflict to come between us or our herdsmen. After all, we are close relatives. The whole countryside is open to you. Take your choice of any section of the land you want, and we will separate. If you want the land to the left, then I'll take the land to the right. If you prefer the land to the right, then I'll take the land to the left." Lot looked Lot took a long look at the fertile plains of the Jordan Valley in the direction of Zorah. The whole area was well watered everywhere, like the garden of the Lord, or the beautiful land of Egypt. This was before the Lord destroyed Sodom and Gomorrah. Lot chose for himself the whole Jordan Valley to the east of them. He went there with his flocks and servants and parted company with his uncle Abram. So Abram settled in the land of Canaan, and Lot moved his tents to the place near Sodom and settled among the cities of the plain. But the people of this area were extremely wicked and constantly sinning against the Lord. After Lot had gone, the Lord said to Abram, "Look, as far as you can see in every direction, north, south, east, and west. I am giving you all this land as far as you can see, to you and your descendants, as a permanent possession, and I will give you so many descendants that, like the dust of the earth, they cannot be counted. Go and walk through the land in every direction, for I am giving it to you." So Abram moved his camp to Hebron and settled near the oaks belonging to Mamre. There he built another altar to the Lord. Abram rescues Lot. Genesis 14, 1 through 16. About this time, war broke out in the region. King Amraphel of Babylonia, King Arioch of Elazar, King Kedorlaomer of Elam, and King Tidal of Goam fought against the King Bera of Sodom, King Bersha of Gomorrah, King Shina of Edom, King Shember of Zeboiim, and the king of Bela, also called Zorah. This second group of kings joined forces in the Sidon Valley, that is, the valley of death, of the Dead Sea. For 12 years they had been subject to the king of Kedorlaomer, but in the 13th year they rebelled against him. 1 year later, Kedorlaomer and his allies arrived and defeated the Rephaites, Asherites, Karamites, and Zuzites at Ham, the Emites, Shebakarites, and the Hurites at Mount Seir, as far as Elpar at the edge of the wilderness. Then they turned back and came to En-Mishpah, now called Kadesh, and conquered all the territories of the Amalekites, and also the Amorites living in Hazon Tamar. Then the rebel king of Sodom, Gomorrah, Adamah, Zeboiah, and Bela, also called Zorah, prepared for battle in the valley of the Dead Sea. They fought against King Kedorlaomer of Edom, King Tidal of Goam, King Amraphel of Babylonia, and King Arioch of Elazar, 4 kings against 5. As it happened, the valley of the Dead Sea was filled with tar pits, and as the army of the king of Sodom and Gomorrah fled, some fell into the tar pits, while the rest escaped into the mountains. The victorious invaders then plundered Sodom and Gomorrah and headed for home, taking with them all the spoils of war and the food supplies. They also captured Lot, Abram's nephew, who lived in Sodom, and carried off everything he owned. But one of Lot's men escaped and reported everything to Abram, the Hebrew, who was living near the oak grove belonging to Mamre. The Amorites, Mamre, and his relatives Eshcol and Aner were Abram's allies. When Abram heard that his nephew Lot had been captured, he mobilized the 318 trained men who had been born in his household. Then he pursued Kedorlaomer's army until he caught up with them in Dan. There he divided his men and attacked during the night. Kedorlaomer's army fled, but Abram chased them as far as Hobah, north of Damascus. Abram recovered all the goods that had been taken, and he brought back his nephew Lot with his possessions and all the women and other captives. Melchizedek blesses Abram. Genesis 14, 17 through 24. After Abram returned from his victory over Kedorlaomer and all his allies. The king of Sodom went out to meet in the valley of Shaval, that is the king's valley. And Melchizedek, the king of Salem and priest of God the Most High, brought Abraham bread and wine. Melchizedek blessed Abram with this blessing: Blessed be Abram by God Most High, creator of heaven and earth, and blessed be God Most High, who has defeated your enemies for you. Then Abram gave Melchizedek a tenth of all the goods he had recovered. The king of Sodom said to Abram, Give back my people who were captured, but you may keep for yourself all the goods you have recovered. Abram replied to the king of Sodom, I solemnly swear to the Lord God Most High, creator of heaven and earth, that I will not take so much as a single thread or sandal thong from what belongs to you. Otherwise, you might say, I am the one who made Abraham rich. I will accept only what my young warriors have already eaten, and I request that you give a fair share of the goods to my allies, Aner, Eshcol, and Mamre. All right, so that ends day. Awesome. So that ends day 4. So a couple things stand out to me as we read day 4. I want to talk about too, like this, the Tower of Babel, right? It's kind of with this going through the chronological Bible. It's kind of it kind of emphasizes or touches on a little bit, but I'm still kind of getting used to reading this Bible. And again, this is kind of just a practice as far as what the Lord is doing, helping me do for this year. The goal is to be faithful and just being in the Word and maintaining. And obviously, as you guys can hear, some of the names, I butcher them, but hey, hopefully I'll get better. And in years to come, be able to better pronounce this. But anyways, one of the things that really stands out to me, and I want to kind of touch base on, is on the Tower of Babel. How it talks about how the Lord saw it, and a comment that the Lord says as, Behold, the people are of one language. In whatever they put their mind to, they will accomplish. So let us go down there, confuse their language, so they would be scattered amongst the earth, right? And something to, this can be called the third incursion of the fall. So there's 3 phases to the fall, as far as why we live in such a fallen state, or why Jesus had to come and die on the cross, right? The first one was Genesis 3, where the serpent deceives Adam and Eve, and they ate of the fruit of the tree of knowledge of good and evil. The second incursion was Genesis 6, where the angels see the women of men, they find them attractive, and they basically come down, and then they create the giants, right? And cause havoc. And then the Lord says, my heart is not content with mankind, because every thought since from the beginning of their childhood is evil, so I'm going to destroy him. But then he finds favor with Noah, and Noah basically starts everything all over again, right? So that's the second incursion. But now here we are after Noah and the flood. God commanded Noah and his children to go forth into all the world and populate it. So we weren't supposed to build big cities, but there was a group that decided, hey, you know what? Let's build a big city so that we can make a name for ourselves and that we would not be scattered. And obviously this got God's attention, and he said, hey, they're going to do it, whatever it is that they're trying to do. And some of like the backstory about behind it, or the theories behind it, is that basically they were trying to create a way to access heaven, to essentially kill God, right? Or that's one of the theories, and there's many more theories, but it is very clear that this is a big focal point. And as we read in the Bible more, we'll see that Genesis 10, the Tower of Babel, this is a big turning point, because this is where the nations get created. the separation of languages. And then even in yesterday we read about Peleg, which he talks about this is when the nations were divided. So Peleg was obviously alive when this happened, as far as the division came. And then it'll talk to in book of Deuteronomy 32, where it talks about the nations being divided up according to the sons of God. So the lowercase g gods. And basically each nation was given their own God to look over them, but then they failed to do that, which leads to Psalm 82, where God is talking to the council of the gods and basically telling them, hey, you're going to die because you didn't do what you were supposed to do. But there is one coming, which is King Jesus, and he's going to establish his reign. He's going to establish his rule, and basically he's going to show everybody this is how it's supposed to be done, which then leads to the millennial reign. Obviously, there is a lot there that I just unpacked, and there's a lot there to chew on. This has been from years of study and reading the Bible, so I just want to kind of point those out. But Genesis 10 is a big one. And then we see the story turn to the focus becomes from global perspective to an individual perspective, right? And now we're focused on a man named Abram, who is called out by God, who is told, leave your father and mother and go into a land that I will give you. And so basically, in a way, let me see if I can summarize this. In Genesis 3, you see humanity being kicked out of the garden, out of the presence of God, right? And then in Genesis 6, you see the destruction of the world and all of humanity. And then it talks about how the fountains of the deep were broken, and then the windows of heaven were open, and it caused this big flood, and it destroyed everything. But at the same time, I also believe that at that time, and of course, this is my belief from just reading the Bible, that there was also another level of separation, because it does talk about that there was giants in those days there and after. So something happened to where the angels were able to procreate with women and create their own species, but then afterwards they're still able to do it, but maybe not to the same extent, and they're trying to recreate it again. And then Genesis 10, the Lord is telling them, hey, go into all the nations, but then the people are like, no, we're going to make a name for ourselves. So it's like, okay, you don't want to listen to me, then I'm going to give you other gods. So it's just very, very interesting reading this and kind of understanding this as far as where we're going. But anyways, just wanted to touch base on that, and just hopefully you guys are enjoying this. All right, guys, be blessed, and I'll see y'all tomorrow.